Plato believed that when you were exposed to something, you were more likely to act on what you were exposed to. So when you were watching dramas and somebody was beating up somebody else, it was going to be a monkey see, monkey do attitude. Aristotle believed sort of the opposite. He believed that when you watched something, when you were having those feelings, if you watched a drama, you would actually act on them without acting. You allowed the actors to do it for you. So you were less likely to act on those feelings, and it was not going to be a monkey see, monkey do. You were just living as if you were the people on stage, and it wasn't going to happen anymore. In society, we tend to have both opinions in regards to sex and violence. Violence is held to a lower standard than sex, mind you. Violence is not as censored as sex in our society. So when it comes to violence, we have more of an Aristotle view, which is the more exposure you have to it, it might be better for you. Because kids have a higher exposure to this, for starters. And the more exposure they have to it, the more they're going to see it. But there's a scale of violence. You can have something, violence can be something as little as picking on your little brother to beating up somebody just like a hate crime or something. There's a definite scale there. But when it comes to sex, there is no real scale. You're either having sex, not having sex, mature enough to handle the consequences, or not mature enough to handle the consequences. There is no real scale there. So when you expose kids to both, there's consequences to both, of course. But when it comes to violence, it's going to be handled less strictly because they have healthy outlets for it. For instance, you can fight for the front seat with your brother. You can fight over who gets the last cookie at the meal. You can play out on the playground. You can go use healthy aggression in sports like basketball and football, hockey. It's all very violent, but it's okay because you're not really causing any harm to somebody. You're having a healthy outlet for this expression. But when it comes to sex, it's a big deal because it doesn't have the same kind of standards attached to it. It's a very high standard for censorship. And here we take more of a Plato view where you definitely have the censorship a little bit. It's a big deal because it's very emotional as well as a biological function. Kids today pretty much are very immature enough to think about it from a pleasure standpoint and not as I'm going to do this because I trust my partner to be there when I get pregnant, or I'm going to do this because, I'm married, or there's so much trust between us. It's not about that. It's about he's cute and I want to get laid, or I would be so much cooler if I slept with this guy or this girl. It's not really thought of in the sense that it needs to be held up. You think about it in such with an immature background that you don't really realize the consequences. And sex is a biological function. Its main purpose is to populate the earth. So kids don't really think about that, and that's why sex is held to a higher standard, because you don't want a monkey see, monkey do, especially when sex is something that can only be handled by mature adults who can actually make the correct decisions with the correct background. And there is no real outlet for the monkey see, monkey do effect. You either do it or you don't. So that's why it's going to be highly censored. And censorship might not be the answer because you want to expose children to sex, but at a rate that they can handle. So censorship is not really so much the answer. Parental guidance through these situations is probably the closest thing to censorship that you would actually want. But apart from that, you can sense both Plato's and Aristotle's views, and not one is more right than the other. It's just they can be applied definitely to different situations.